Jake Howie, nice to talk to you. How are you today?
I'm really well, thanks. How are you doing?
I'm very well. And you were just telling me that you're in Sydney, yeah?
I'm currently in Sydney, yeah.
And it's raining. Is Sydney your home base? Is that where you're from?
I've been living here for about, God, it's gone fast, 5 years I've been here, but I'm a natural Aucklander, yeah. It still feels like home.
Hey, so Girls, Girls, Girls is your show.
It is.
And I just want to read this a little bit. A love story to the girls who raised you, befriended you, and the girl within. Just kind of unpack that for me a little bit.
Well, I mean, I started writing jokes about my best friend Grace, and Grace and I met in 1998. We were 13 at Avonmore College, West Auckland, and she has been my best friend the whole way through, and I kind of just realized how she's the most important relationship I think I've ever had in my life, really, like externally of my mother and my sisters and everything like that. And then I kind of realized that everything I'd become was because of my mum and sisters who raised me, and girls like Grace, who I think like a lot of gay men, particularly of my generation, we all had our kind of group of girls that protected us, particularly in high school and beyond.
Yep.
And then as I was writing the show, I kind of realized that like all of this feminine vibe energy is something that I think always been embarrassed of, because growing up in the early 2000s was always like, oh, you like rom-coms? I'm like, no, but it was actually my favorite type of movie. It still is. So that's kind of where it came from. It's just celebrating all things girly and feminine and trying to make myself not feel ashamed of all of the feminine things that I think I was told were, you know, puffy and faggy and all that sort of stuff, but actually now I can embrace as part of me.
Yeah, you raise an interesting thing here. I interviewed a few years ago a woman who was, I guess, exploring being lesbian and the butch side of that. And yet how she was describing it was, well, it's actually just emotions. So, you know, women can be assertive. They don't have to be masculine, or we don't have to label them as masculine. Because I think what you're describing is just an emotional side, isn't it? Or an appreciation of things that aren't stereotypical. Because I like rom-coms, I like all sorts of movies, but we don't, you know, we don't have to box ourselves in, do we?
I agree. And I think you're totally right. Like, I've always really connected with femininity from an emotional point of view. And when I say femininity and masculinity, and I think you're saying the same thing, it's not about gender, it's more of a vibe. And I've always been hyper feminine. I love, you know, crying with friends. I love emotions. I love having real conversations. And unfortunately, a lot of those things were prescribed. And I think to some extent still are prescribed to femininity. And I think a lot of the time people are kind of afraid of their feminine side, even women, even gay guys, even, you know, gender fluid people. There's something about femininity that makes us feel like it's weak or something. And I think the show is really about celebrating the strength I've found in the woman in my life and the kind of the girl that is in me.
Fantastic. So how long does it take to plan something like this? And the reason I ask that is I've talked to a number of comedians this week, and they put in a blurb about what they want to do to a festival, and the show actually isn't formed, so they then kind of go into this panic mode.
That happens a lot.
Yeah, so explain your process of creating the show. How long has it taken you to bring it together?
Well, I think for me, like I've had, you know, this is my fourth solo show, and I think the other three that I've done have either just been a collection of jokes with not really a narrative. And even if I have done a show that has some form of a narrative, it's often been like, I'll call it this, and it ends up being something completely different. But for some reason, this show was always really fully formed in my head. Like I liked the idea of subverting Girls, Girls, Girls as, like, you know, you usually see in a place that is kind of not necessarily celebrating women in the right way, you know, strip clubs and what have you, and creating something that was really a love letter to the strength that women have given me, kind of thing. So I always liked that concept. And then as I started writing it, it just became about my best friend. And I think because I knew I wanted to write a show about all of the women in my life that have really shaped me, it kind of fell into this kind of story of my best friend quite naturally, because she was the kind of the one person that has always kind of been a pillar of every experience I've had after the age of 13, which is you know, I'm nearly 40. It's a long time. So this one was kind of weirdly, I think because it was a love letter to her, it felt a lot more formed, because really it's just me telling our ridiculous stories of our friendship and kind of reflecting back on a friendship in my youth as an adult who is still has a friendship equally as strong with that person. So it kind of is just almost like a diary.
Has she seen it?
She has.
Yeah. And what was her reaction to it?
It was the most beautiful thing. I mean, I go into the night she saw it at the end of the show, but she knows me so well, and she knows the story so well, that I think for her it was an emotional roller coaster. We're at a point in our lives, I think, as well as, you know, we're elder millennials. We're kind of about to turn 40, which feels like a big milestone in life, you know. And I think for both of us, it was really this look back at the early 2000s and the things we did, and culturally what was going on in the moment and how we responded to them. So for her, it was really emotional and fun, and she cried a lot, because I think it's not a sad show at all, but for her, it was like, for me, it's a diary for us. This was just our friendship and the things we did, going out together, coming out together as, you know, me being gay, her looking for boys for the first time, all experiencing that together. It's a beautiful thing that if you're lucky, you get to share with someone over a friendship that lasts decades.
I was on Instagram today, and I was looking at one or two of your videos, and I was really captivated by the straight face set that you did. Is that in the show that you're bringing or not?
No, it's not. I mean, it was just something that I feel like every kind of, you know, particularly I think maybe specific to gay men. I mean, I could be wrong, but I think specifically gay men growing up, you learn to do the, hey, bro, you know, like, oh, shit, yeah, whatever, because it kind of makes you feel safe in certain moments. And I think bringing it back in comedy is hilarious, because it's a surefire hit. People always laugh because, you know, playing the straight guy, even for straight men, they're cosplaying as straight men. Like, it's so silly. But people love that. But there are bits in the show that definitely cover the vibe of, like, the straight face. So you'll appreciate some of the bits in the show too.
We were chatting just before I pressed record, and you mentioned your wedding, which you probably shouldn't have, because I'm now going to ask you about it. So 2017, you got married, yeah?
Yeah.
Are you okay to share it?
Of course.
And so what was that? Yeah, what was that day like?
Oh, it was lovely. I mean, it was so full of emotion. It was really shocking. I think there was a part of me that kind of like, you know, me and my husband never thought we would get married growing up. It wasn't something that was legal, as many people know. It's still so kind of recent, actually, in the scheme of things. And I think it was kind of quite shocking, because there was, I think, parts of me that had weird internalized homophobia about it. It's not a real wedding, though. It's not a real wedding. And then I was really overcome with emotion on the day, realizing that, oh shit, this is a real wedding, and you know, our love is the same as anyone else's love. And it sounds crazy saying that as a queer person, a gay person, but it really shocked me, and I think it shocked a lot of people in our lives. Were there for us. They were loving it, but everyone was like, "Whoa, this feels really powerful." Because at the time as well, we had two weddings, one in the UK, which is where we met, and one in Auckland. And I think for both countries, it was only a few years that had been legal. So for a lot of people, it was their first same-sex wedding, and so I think there was an extra kind of element of that. But it was just so beautiful, and like, you know, I feel very lucky that I met someone who makes me feel so happy all the time. Not all the time, but most of the time.
Yeah, well, that's wonderful. But you're right. When you grow up hearing negative messages that you are not the same as, you're not equal to, then it can have repercussions for a long time.
It goes in here.
But the law's changed, and now we can have our relationships recognised legally, which is so important.
Yeah, it's so, and we're so lucky in New Zealand. I know that, you know, it's nowhere's perfect, but it really, my husband's from Italy, and he, like, you know, growing up in Italy was a different experience than growing up in New Zealand. I think we're really lucky in New Zealand that the phobia against kind of anything queer is definitely not as bad as it is in a lot of places, and I feel very lucky that we grow up in a place where at least the government protects us. So that was really nice.
My final question, do you have a go-to comfort food?
Oh my God. How much time do you have? Oh my God, I've got like a million. I married an Italian, and so that means that pasta till the day I die. And I think I married an Italian. It was, of course, very organic that we met, and, you know, but the fact that he was from Italy, one of the plus points, I remember thinking the first day, oh my God, if this works out, I'm going to have pasta for life. So I feel like for me...
And he cooks. He obviously cooks.
I've got certo. Yeah, he cooks all the time. He cooked yesterday. He just makes beautiful food, and my favorite pasta is carbonara, and he is from Rome, It's like a Roman pasta, so he makes carbonara like the best in the world, and brilliant. I can't, you know, to me pasta it's sexy, it's delicious, it's overly indulgent, it's Italian, it's all the things in the world that I love. And so just sitting with a big, beautiful bowl of carbonara and a nice red wine just is my happy place for sure.
Well, I'm really hungry now. I shouldn't have asked that.
I'll cook pasta when I'm in Auckland for you. How about that?
Brilliant. Yeah. Bring it on stage. Hand it out.
Hey, don't tempt me, because I will.
I am tempting you. I'm tempting you right now. Okay? Do it.
Challenge accepted.
Jake, lovely to talk to you. All the best for the upcoming season.
Thank you so much. Lovely to talk to you too.